with the presentation today, I want to talk about where I think we might be going next, because although we, I'm saying we're not moved on that much, things seem to be getting easier, or the opportunities for doing what we wanted to do when we set out seem to be presenting themselves now. So this was our vision, to bring stories to life, to bring fictional worlds into the real world, so that people could live these like second lives, but not second lives in the sense of a virtual reality headset, but second lives in the sense of what their imagination was allowing them to do. And this meant that we wanted to create these persistent story worlds that were everywhere, and that you could sort of interact with them. They would adapt to your personal preferences and things that you did. And of course we had to make them inclusive, so that they didn't only include the people with the latest gadgets, that there was different sort of levels of inclusiveness depending on sort of where you were, either in socioeconomic terms or whatever other things. And we decided that it needed to be cloud-based, because only by taking this kind of sort of top-down view that you could be this marionette, be the puppet master, sort of controlling these different platforms, so that the audience would get this kind of seamless experience. And so this talk's called the Storyworld of Things, and we've done some various sort of experiments over the years. This device here is called Twine. It connects. It was a Kickstarter project which I backed, and it connects to Wi-Fi, and it understands its orientation. So it will send us sort of an event to say it's top, down, bottom, left. It will also send temperature. It will send vibration if you shake it. And so we connected this to Conductor, and we got this toy to have a little bit of a personality. So it would complain if you left it face down, or if it was time for bed, this type of thing. So that was an early thing. And then we got an opportunity to work on this project. It was called Cola Light, and the idea was the goal of the project was to replace kerosene lamps in rural India, because families that live close to these or live with these kerosene lamps, it's equivalent to smoking 2 packs of cigarettes a day. And so they wanted to replace them with these solar powered lights. And what we did was we looked online, and we found that there were these devices. This is a Raspberry Pi, and attached to it is an air quality monitoring device. And we found one of these in Mumbai that was sending out information about carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, and it connected into this data network where we could take triggers based on the air quality level, whether it was, if the air quality was bad or if it was kind of good, and we used that to control the mood of a character. So this character you could communicate with her through text messaging predominantly, and she would respond based on the air quality. So if the air quality was very good, she would be happy, and she would be kind of more chatty, and if the air quality was bad, then she would be a lot more grumpy and so on. So then we thought, well, maybe we can connect the real world to virtual worlds, and this project, Nina presented this opportunity for the Learn, Do, Share event. So the story was to raise awareness about homelessness, and you could connect with this character and her circle of friends, like her sister, her grandma, and so on. And you could do that on social media and with email. And Conductor would track this, and then when you went to the live event, the live Learn, Do, Share event, you put in your email address, and it would go to Conductor and look at the characters you'd met online prior to the live event, and then it would change the virtual reality for you based on the experience you'd had previously. And this is Johnny testing it out, who also did the Conductor sort of scripting to make this happen. And this is a guy called Robert Andre, who built the Unity environment that was adaptive. Eduardo helped with the API programming to get the environment to change. And this environment here, it's got fans and different like heaters and sensors. And as you wander around the environment, it will blow hot and cold based on whether you're near the cooker or and such like. So it's quite interesting. And I think a key thing with these projects, from where we began and where I think things are going now, is really it's about the active creation of belief. And when I first came across this phrase, it really opened lots of lots of new opportunities for me, because I think often in transmedia storytelling, we're trying to make things really real. And actually we don't need to make them like really real, like they don't need to be like hyper real to be believable. They just need to give the right types of stimulus to make people believe it. So for example, in filmmaking, if you wanted to capture like a woman's pregnancy, you wouldn't have a 9-month-long film. You would just take the important moments in that journey, and you could probably condense that into something small, and the audience would get the same appreciation for that and the same thrill with it. Whereas in transmedia storytelling, often we think that, well, it has to, it's got to be so real that it has to expand in real time for the character. I don't think that's always true. And I think what we're doing, and it was working with Famaro and Nivio, when they said, what's the wow moments in this experience? And being able to look at the audience journey and say, where do they get a kick? Where do they really get a buzz from this? And why don't we focus our storytelling around those bits so that they go from wow to wow to wow. And we cut out all the dross in the middle, which is what you would do when you were editing a film. And so let me give you an example of how we might bring this idea of creating belief into the real world to create these pervasive sort of entertainment experiences and so on. So this is looking at a location-based story, or location-based story world. So here I've shown the real location, and the real location is likely to have a real history. Now on top of that, we can add several layers of fiction. So it might be that there's a fiction, a story that's told online, which attracts us first to go to the location. Location-based stories that only unlock their narrative when you're actually in the place, they suffer from the problem that you're often not in the place, and it's incredibly difficult to get people to go to these locations, even however exciting you try to make it. And what we should remember as creators, that we have the story. We have a story which is supposed to be drawing people in. And you'll find that people who read novels and they mention certain places, they want to go to that place. But it's because they read the book first. They didn't go to the place and they go, I wonder if there's a novel written about this cafe. And so if we can create this sense online first, which is much easier to access, that's going to sort of motivate somebody to go there and unlock new content because they want to experience something new. So often this, when you see these stories, this real history and these real locations, we kind of treat them as static, but there's no reason for us to do that anymore, because lots of municipalities are publishing data about all kinds of things, about the way the city is breathing, whether the traffic flows or the arrivals of the trains and so on. And we thought about, you got Thomas the Tank Engine, like the kids' characters, but all the information about the subway here, the London Underground, you could actually create characters for all of the train lines and have them sort of grumpy or sad or complaining about the commute, or someone else has chucked themselves under the car again, all these types of things. And it would really, if you've got a company that's looking to create engagement with their audiences, quite often the people who need it most are the ones with the most boring products. And that, cleaning products or whatever it might be, they're not very sexy. And there's an opportunity to use storytelling with these types of sort of otherwise dry or kind of boring things. So let's look at this. So I've shown this sort of what I would call like public data, but we also have corporate data. So we could look at the occupancy in hotel rooms. We could look at number of transactions that went through a payment terminal, for example, this type of thing. And we also have personal data. So there's a lot of interest right now in the wearables, as Karen mentioned. Like I'm wearing a Fitbit now. No, it's not been charged up. I've been walking around. It's been wasted. So we could look at the heart rate and like people's food consumption. How can we take this and bring it into a story? So what we could do is to create a dynamic world. So often in transmedia storytelling, we think of the story world, and that's the kind of the fabric, And then we have these narratives, these stories that are placed within the story world. And I think using this data, we can create a dynamic world that makes us feel like the things are really happening right now, but it's maybe not, it's not disturbing your narrative too much. Because I think one of the things that can be problematic is these branching narratives, because before long they kind of go in everywhere. And the types of projects that we normally work on is where someone has a point to make. So we already know the plot points, and we want people to feel like you know, they've got some agency in the world, but actually at the end we want the same conclusion. That's why we're doing it like that. Now, the way that we would normally start to write something, or that, you know, if I do a workshop and I say to people to start is, okay, so you've got a story. Now think about the participation that will unlock the story. What is it that you want the audience to do to reveal that? So if it was a book, they just pick up the book and flick the pages. But if it's a location-based game, or if it's a transmedia story somewhere, then you would say, well, they need to go with a friend, they need to find the object, and we can see how that participation relates to the story. But we can also flip this the other way around. So we say, well, we want people to do something cool. We think of a cool experience, and then we think, well, what story can we have to sort of justify that, or help sort of glue all these different participation moments together. So not too long ago, I created this model, and this was part of our sort of journey towards developing Conductor, because we recognise that lots of different people work on a transmedia project. They all speak different languages, and we wanted a collaborative tool where the technologist could speak to the writer, could speak to, you know, whoever else, the experience designer that was in this. So what we found was that often, if you're working down at this sort of interactive layer, you lost sight of what the actual experience was supposed to be. Or if, you know, so you'd know that, well, if I do this, this attribute is going to change. It's going to go from sort of like on to off, but I don't know what that means in terms of the player experience. And it could also be at the top level that you've got this idea of an experience you want to create, but you don't really know how to translate that. So one of the breakthroughs was the beat sheet that Belen showed before. But so if you hold that in mind, that's one breakthrough. And then I discovered this, where we're looking at kernels in a story are the kind of key events that you really are the things that make the story the story. So if we look at Goldilocks and the Three Bears, if Goldilocks never meets the Three Bears, it's not Goldilocks and the Three Bears. So that kind of moment is a kernel. Now, if she stops to pick up flowers or go swimming in a lake, that's more of a sort of satellite moment. And so what we find is that we can allow the audience to interact a lot more with these satellite moments. So these can sort of change and blend, and it won't actually affect too much these key plot points that we want along the journey. So if we look at these sort of pervasive worlds where we're trying to allow people to live a different, like a second life in the real world, we've got this world building thing, which makes me feel like it's a living, breathing world. And then I've got the stories that I've created that I want delivered. And we see this sort of interaction here between the satellites where, like, if it's raining today, then it might, you know, give me a sense that something slightly different is going to happen in the story. The characters are behaving differently because they had a certain objective, but now the trains are not running because they're sort of water flooded or whatever. And then we've got our kernels, which don't get affected so much. And of course, when we're building these worlds, these interactive things, we're hoping, and we would design them to try to encourage people to tell their own personal stories. And these personal stories we want shared on social media to build awareness, you know, to sort of flow around like this back to our narratives. And you could do it where these personal stories feed back into the world building. Now, whether you do that automatically or if you have some sort of curation system to say, yeah, I want this to be part of the world and it's not to be, that's some other part. So you've got those sort of different ideas, and this is one way that you might approach, because these things can get quite complex very quickly if you're not careful. So I took an event, so a man walks into a bar, and I've got two characters that are in the bar, the local regular and the bartender. It's a very sort of London-based thing. And what we could say is that this character, his kind of communications is based on activity. So the man that walks into the bar, if he's not been very active, he's going to respond in one way, and if he has been active, you know, based on the Fitbit or something, then he's going to respond in a different way. So I walk into the bar and I'm getting an interaction with this local character that makes it feel like, whoa, you know, like he really recognises me. It feels like part of the world, but I'm not affecting the main narrative. And here we've got the bartender, and he's looking at, you know, how frequently have I been into the bar? So I've never been here before, or he's a regular. And of course you could put these in a map. I mean, you could sort of say, well, if he's not been active and he's never been here before, so you could go down that route. But I think sometimes simplicity can get you most of the way to create, you know, in terms of that active creation of belief. This is enough, because now you've got two characters that are sort of responding in this way. And actually, earlier in the week, we were at Transmedia Living Lab in Madrid, and Christy Dana gave a presentation where she was talking about dynamic dialogue systems in the game like Left 4 Dead and such like, where the different objects would interact with you, you know, to make it feel like it was a living environment. And this is that same kind of idea. Now, something that we've been looking at recently is this MetaWare platform. So it's again another Kickstarter campaign. So I've put, so that's a Canadian quarter there, and 10 pence piece, just to show you how small it is. It really is very tiny. And this is a full-on sort of microprocessor, and you can, this is the battery that I've soldered to it, and this is a vibration thing. So you can give feedback based on how you sort of program this. So you could, this would connect with Bluetooth to your phone, and then the phone is connected to wherever. So obviously in our world it's always connected to Conductor. And so what we could do is look at social stories that were based on sort of feelings and sort of like the ambiguity. Like say for example, if you're directing a film, it's not always it's not always the best idea to say to an actor, right, I want you to be angry, because then they're going to go, argh, you know, and you might want to say, right, this has happened, you've come in late and there's no food in the fridge, right, go for it. And then if they're angry, it's different. And I think the ambiguity sometimes on the actor's face draws you in, and it might be the same with this type of feedback mechanism, that the ambiguity of the signals that you're getting actually encourages you to use your imagination a lot more, rather than being hit over the head with something on a screen, for example. So this is just some ideas that we've been playing with, that we can connect these, connect different players, different members of the audiences, and create this social device network, so that we have a social network now where people connect, but we could actually connect them through their wearables. So it's quite an interesting thing. These devices have accelerometers and all kinds of things, temperature. So you might say, well, I'm paired with my wife, and you know, if she's in trouble or something happens under there, I might get a vibration, or it could go backwards and forwards. You know, if I get a certain pulse frequency, it says that we're totally in sync right now. We're both using the bathroom or something. And why you would want to know that, I don't know. But it's just to say that I guess it's this idea that the technology is there, and it's just really like ripe for creative ideas for people to come and do it. And I think that often, you know, if you say to a creator, you know, just go ahead and make something, they kind of want to know what the constraints are or what the possibilities are in order to sort of take it to the next level. And I think part of this presentation really is saying that there's amazing amounts of things you can do, and this is just scratching the surface. And I think this is something that I really like to sort of leave you with, in terms of why it's the participation in these stories is important. Because you know, in film you would say, you know, always show it rather than tell it, and so on. And this is taken from like the learning and simulation world, where if you do something you really understand it. And we've been doing games to help students with ethics and financial responsibility and this type of thing. And to really walk in the shoes of somebody that has to make an ethical choice, is quite different from actually just reading it on the page. So it's unbelievable how many things we can do. So this is my final slide, and I want to say thank you very much. Be remarkable is the motto of our company, and I'd like it to be yours too. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Two things really. First of all, I'd like to thank you for organising what's been really one of the most fascinating and useful and brain-turning afternoons, days I've spent here.
Thank you.
And the second thing is you've put masses of stuff in those last slides, all of which were treating ideas that would just bring out of my head as fast as they came up by fresh ideas. Is there a way, can you put that on slide?
I mean, all of our stuff is always online, and hopefully all the speakers will give their permission to put their information online, and we've videoed everything. So, you know, one of our things, of course, so our main business model is licensing the technology. So the more information we can make available to inspire people to create their own stuff, that creates a bigger market for our technology. So that's just to be open about why we keep sharing all of our processes and trying to encourage this sort of discussion. And yeah, so we will be giving it away as much as we can, yeah, except the software, obviously. which is available for a ridiculously low price. Goodness me, Governor. I'm virtually giving it away. So this is kind of the end of the evening. We've got the venue until 9 o'clock. If you want to go to a pub, there are some in the area, but you kind of you can just invent what you do next. Really, it's up to you. Are there any more questions, Joan?
Tell me if most of the contributors today, the speakers today, did they actually use Conductor?
Most did, but that wasn't a requirement for speaking. I mean, we went to examples that we thought would be really interesting, and it just so happens that a lot of our clients are doing really interesting stuff. but it's true. But it's true, because it's like at the beginning that I said, you know, like Keith is saying with his technology, if you knock on the same doors, they're used to existing business models, and we've come at this trying to do something, you know, innovative and something different. And people that are not doing anything innovative and different, they don't see us as relevant. And so we've attracted people that want to do amazing, you know, innovative works. And so that's why we've, you know, managed to put this day together.
Just one quick thing, sorry, just one quick question. In terms of major corporations, are a lot of them actually using this platform? Are actually any of them actually exploring transmedia storytelling?
Yes, they are. Yeah, we're doing work now with Toyota, and we've, you know, big companies. I mean, Harlequin Mills and Boon is a big company. We've done work with Disney. So yeah, they are. They are. But you see, that's not our main business. So we normally would look to work with an agency or a local production company, and we sort of provide the technology and consulting on the back of that. But we do, as like with the Canal Plus thing, that was a turnkey solution. We did all the creative and everything. So we do that. Yeah. Yes.
What has been the project you've worked on or even been aware of that has had the most successful application, in your view, of live experience and kind of seamless interaction with other platforms?
How do you mean by live? How would you define live?
Define live by an experience that cannot happen in any other realm apart from the immediate the immediate here and now. So some experiences have already been mentioned. I just wondered, in terms of benchmarks or kind of inspirations, beyond what we've seen today, if there's other projects, or even not realized yet, that you've got your eyes on.
Well, I don't know. I think I'd have to think about that a bit. It's quite. I don't know. I think one of the projects that I really found inspiring was the inside experience. So this is only partially answering your question. And what was really interesting there was, so they took a familiar trope of a woman had been kidnapped, and the audience had to get her out by giving her information and so on. And it was great for the audience because the way this project was shot was they shot on a set, and then they left the set up, and then they published the videos, and as people interacted and offered advice, so they would shoot just an insert that could be put into the normal scripted bit. So it's a little bit like I was describing with the kernels and the satellites. They had the kernel of the story, and they would allow the audience to interact on Facebook. They would shoot the satellites and slot it into the thing, and people really felt ownership of it, and they would take Facebook quotes and put it as the opening title card for the video that was published that week. So it really felt like it was a live experience that was developing. And when this is actually in Sarah's book, Sarah. I think the case study is in Sarah's book. And what Intel said was that normally, the Toshiba had done research and found that young people felt that Toshiba's was their dad's brand. So they weren't even considering it when it came to buy a laptop. And after this, the sentiment towards Toshiba swung by 16%. And they said this is off the charts, because normally you're looking for a couple of single digit swings, and this went way up there, because now they were seen as sexy because it was a horror director, it was a well-known actress in this experience, and it was engaging, it was interactive. So that's something that came immediately to mind, but it's not necessarily a performance based thing. But okay, you're all free to go. Thank you very much. Thank you.